Hi, I'm Erin Pollard. I'm a project officer for ERIC and the What Works Clearinghouse in the Institute of Education Sciences, which is an independent research arm of the U.S. Department of Education. We received questions about an upcoming solicitation, and we wanted to highlight some of our resources and how they might be of assistance in finding evidence. And specifically the request is, how do you find information on meeting college students' basic needs? That is tier 4 evidence. And when we think about evidence in the Department of Education, by our statute, there are 4 evidence tiers. Strong evidence are the well-designed, well-implemented experimental studies. So normally this means a randomized controlled trial, and it has a positive statistically significant effect on the outcome with no overriding negative effects from other studies that study the same thing. It has a large sample of at least 350 students in more than one location, which in post-secondary is hard. So this is that gold standard. And then another really tough standard, I view this as a silver standard, is our moderate evidence. And so that's a well-designed, well-implemented quasi-experimental study. That means that there's a study that has a control group, but it's not a perfect randomized control group. It might be a convenient sample. It may be students that aren't exactly the same, but can still give you some really good information that the program that the study was studying likely caused that impact. And as we see for strong evidence, it requires 350 students in more than one site. Okay, then we get to promising evidence. And what promising evidence is it can be a randomized control trial or experimental study where something went wrong. It could be a quasi-experimental study where something went wrong, or a case where they had fewer than 350 students or only done on one campus. So many of our studies that we see in post-secondary are at that promising level. Now, another option is it can be a well-designed and well-implemented correlational design. That means that it's showing the relationship between two things, but it's not able to explain why there is a relationship because there is no control group. But there are some statistical controls for selection bias. This leads us to, so all of these are our 3 highest tiers of evidence. This is with the clearinghouse badges. We put indicators or studies for strong evidence, moderate evidence, and for some promising evidence if we have standards, which is generally for experimental studies and quasi-experimental studies that just fail to have that sample size requirement. Okay, but that's not where we are for this competition. We are in the demonstrates rationale. And that means that there needs to be a well-designed, well-defined logic model where there is research underway. And so when we think about this, it means that there is a theory of action that people have articulated. Here is how we think this program should work. And the logic model can be formal and look sort of like this, all right, that has the resources, the activities, outputs, and the impacts. This is an example of one that is done. I wouldn't say that this is a gold star, but this is an example of what a logic model can be, but it can also be articulated in prose, in the text. So if you are going to find this evidence, where do you find it? So, well, the clearinghouse badges strong and moderate and some promising evidence. ERIC is where I recommend going to find all evidence. Now, this isn't going to have a badge that says, here's demonstrates rationale. You're going to have to do a little work, but ERIC is a much broader database. While the clearinghouse has about 10,000 studies, ERIC has over 2 million. And so you're much more likely to find studies. So if I were looking for studies on meeting college students' basic needs, what you would probably want to think about doing is type college student basic needs. All right, you're going to treat this like Google because that is how our brains are trained to work in 2024. And you're going to get some things: basic needs, insecurity, that kind of thing, students' basic needs. I would recommend, to make our search better, I would put it in quotations. And college, It might be post-secondary, it might be other things. So you can search here, you get better results by putting those terms together. With how the ERIC search engine works, if it is in quotes, if a term's in quotes, it's counted as one word. And if you have fewer than 3 search terms, then all 3 of them need to return in the results. And if you put 4 or more, we only need 75% of the terms to show up, to be present in the title or the abstract or the other index metadata for them to show up in the results. For me, my worry is basic needs is colloquial and broad and probably not the best term. And you're also going to have issues where college students, post-secondary, higher education, university, all of those words are going to come there. So I recommend using what ERIC is known for, and that is our controlled vocabularies or a thesaurus. And what this means is that our indexers, our team goes in and identifies terms, and we use the same term for everything. So we might call everything higher education. That would match college students, it would match university, it would match community college, all to this one term. So first thing I'm going to look for is basic need. So I'm going to type basic need. And there's nothing here. Okay, so when I think of basic needs, I think of food insecurity. It's not there. Okay, so let's try broader. All right, and you can see that there's things about food service, that kind of thing. That's not what I want. What is another word? Oh, including synonyms helps. So I would look for hunger, right? If you don't have food, if you're food insecure, you're going to be hungry. All right. Hunger. This is one of our things. All right, here we go. Okay, so then you can search the collection using this descriptor. And this gives everything. Oh, this looks relevant. It might be. You'll have to find out. But then I'm going to scroll down and I am going to limit it to either higher education or post-secondary education. And we can see that the number of results is almost identical because they're used rather similarly. I would use here, you can also see that 2-year colleges, which is includes both community colleges as well as some states have 2-year colleges that are not community colleges like New York. So I'm going to use the broadest term, higher education. And you can see that these are some really relevant results. To get what you can see here is if you click on the record, you can see that the title, the authors, the source, other descriptors that might help you get where you're looking for, like ancillary school services, that might be a good descriptor term. And then to get the full text, ERIC doesn't have permission with the publisher to give you this full text, but if you click on this link, it will take you to the publisher's website. And if you are if you have a library subscription, you may have access to the full text. Otherwise, you can work with your library to get the full article. Okay, so going back, hunger is one thesaurus term. What are some other terms that might talk about student basic needs? I would look for homeless. Homeless people, that's not really what I want. Let's see. Housing. So when I look at relating terms, housing needs, right? Because while someone is a homeless person, probably is not that right descriptor, but it gets me close. Let's think about it. Poverty is also a good relating term. Okay, so I search using this, and you can see these are other descriptors: homeless people, poverty, housing. All of those might be places to look. So I want to look at housing needs. And then I'm going to, again, limit it to higher education because I know that there's a lot of restrictions, a lot of programs that serve the K-12 population, and I'm not as interested in that. And here you can see that we have a good set of studies to look at. Now, as you scroll, you may see some of these have full text available directly from ERIC, some do not. So when you click on it, you'll have to read it through it to see if it meets that demonstrating rationale requirement. But this is the general way that I would approach doing this search. If you have questions, when you go to eric.ed.gov and scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see the contact us. And here's how you contact our help desk. And we're always happy to give recommendations on how we would do a search and how we would think about those search strategies. So I hope this helps, and good luck with your applications.